Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining in for this webinar. Really excited to have you all with us today. We're going to be talking about conversational commerce, ways for you to increase your marketing ROI using platforms like WhatsApp and Instagram. Before we get started, I'd love to hear where our attendees are dialing in from today. So please share the countries you're dialing in from. Right, we have the Netherlands, we have South Africa, we have Malaysia, Colombia, India. It's truly a global webinar. Right, we have London, we have Mexico. Well, good morning to Mexico and good evening to India. Lovely, we really have folks from all over the world. And what industries are you dialing in from? Are you part of e-commerce, retail, SaaS? We have a wide variety of industries joining us today, leading from retail to lead generation to automotive to telecom. Thanks everyone for sharing a little bit about your background. Really excited to have you here. I'm going to move on to the introductions.
Yeah, we're getting there. There you go.
So for today's session, I'll be moderating and we'll be chatting with you guys on the chat window as well. We have our VP of Product, Joy van Ommen, who's going to be talking to us all about conversational commerce and the different use cases you could solve for. And we have Mihai Jelea, who's our solutions engineer, who's going to be showing you how things work in practice. The agenda for today is a three-pointer. We will look at the current state of advertising. We'll have an intro to conversational commerce. And finally, we'll talk about how MessageBird will help you win. If you have any questions or any comments, please use the chat section. Next to the chat section, there's also a question section. Feel free to post your questions there. With that said, I'll hand it over to Joey.
Thank you, Rahman. And yes, welcome to everyone. It's great to see everyone here from all over the world. I've been moderating a chat briefly in the last couple of seconds as well. So I've been seeing where everyone's from and the general industries that they find themselves in. We've put together a couple of slides and an overall presentation to touch on a few things that we're seeing in the market, that we're seeing with customers, that I personally pay very close attention to in terms of trends when it comes to business messaging and conversational commerce, and just generally how businesses interact with their customers and how they should be thinking about this moving forward in the future as well. Like Rahman mentioned, I'm going to go over a couple different things, primarily starting off with a bit of an overview first that I'll dive into a second on the current state of advertising, then going more into conversational commerce as a concept, and then ultimately how we as MessageBird can help businesses actually get the most value out of this concept and also work towards implementation. To start off at the very beginning, I want to direct everyone to this slide and just get back on the same page. Today, there are essentially three areas or three entry points where your customers typically go to when it comes to interacting with your business, which hopefully ultimately leads to conversion. These three touch points, I call them areas of consideration here because that's where the consumer makes the consideration to purchase either a product or a service and vice versa, which naturally leads to that moment of conversion. These three are the physical store, the website, and of course the mobile app. Most stores either have all three or at least two of these, and this is the main way that they actually acquire their customers and ultimately also position their product in the market. The touch points that lead to these entry points could be a variety of different things, all falling into the overall category of either lead generation or different marketing activities to acquire more traffic towards these entry points. The ones that we'll be particularly talking about today are more on the digital ad side of things. I'm assuming most of you will be familiar with these. These are your Facebook ads, Google ads, Bing ads, and just generally digital ads placed on a wide variety of these types of platforms to really get the attention of your target audience and funnel them towards one of those entry points. Now, what we've learned, and this is based on a variety of inputs, primarily customers that we work with directly, but also, again, trends that we're seeing in the market, reports that analysts work on that we work on with them as well. And we gather a whole lot of input to kind of help determine how we can improve this setup for businesses in general. Now, there's a couple different things that we've learned from these different inputs. One of them being, and again, I'll go into a bit more detail further down, is that on the ad side of things, there's still a lot of room for improvement. And there's also a bit of a slope when it comes to the general ROI we see businesses getting out of this approach. And there's a need to get more innovation going on this side to get more engagement from customers and only get these customers to those entry points. The second one is actually on that piece of conversion, where there are also downsides to these three entry points that today largely remain unaddressed by the technology that is already available. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second as well. The first one on the challenges that we're seeing on the advertising side, it mainly comes down to two things. We're seeing not the same level of engagement on ads, where you see click-through rates just not being as high as it once was. It's sloping. It's generally also very dependent on the industry. We're no longer really seeing the engagement there. And this is largely due to just saturation in the market. There are more businesses than ever, not just on the world, but also on platforms like Facebook, creating a lot of competition when it comes to ultimately getting visibility for your ads, for one, but also really getting the attention of consumers. Because of the same saturation, there's also just a need to be very innovative and have something that's provocative to get people to really engage. Otherwise, people just kind of skim over it generally. And again, it doesn't have that same click-through that we were used to several years ago. The second one also, and it's the same, it's a result of the same symptoms, is that things are also getting more expensive. You're competing with more businesses. There are more businesses in your respective industries, and the average CPA is also just generally increasing, thus having a very significant impact on ultimately your ROI. Now, to talk about those entry points and the shortcomings that I was mentioning earlier, I just want to go through all three of them quickly just to give you an overview as to where we see the challenges really pop in. On the physical store side of things, this is how businesses really started off way before technology came in and drastically innovated on things. But this is just generally the least convenient one, right? It's the physical place you have to go to. You have to drive there, commute there. It could be not in reach depending on where you are in the world. If you want to order, you're limited to physical stock. You're limited to actual staff there. Again, not the best way to really engage with your customers at scale and to really grow this. The second one, the website, huge leap forward, of course, from the physical store, still limited. It still is limited to the information currently found on that website. There is often a live chat functionality, but most businesses have a pretty clunky implementation of this. There's usually not a real person behind it. It's kind of FAQ-y, but not necessarily as helpful as you need to be. And there's very little context of the consumer on the website that really helps them resolve their issues a lot more quickly and get the information they're looking for. And last but not least, it's also not a channel that's easy to use to re-engage a customer that's on your website. Imagine a customer clicking on one of your ads, landing on a landing page, and then bouncing right afterwards. As they haven't opted in for anything specifically, there's really no way to re-engage with them. And you can find them through remarketing and other tools, but just generally there is no real personal two-way way to get their attention back and to open up that conversation again. And we're seeing this back in the overall data that we're seeing from reports as well, where the bounce rate is pretty high. It's 47% on average from surveys recently done. And also conversion is between 3 and 5%, depending on the industry that you're in. And again, the effectiveness of these landing pages and the content, which is increasingly becoming more competitive, and you're competing with people's bandwidth as well. Last but not least, the mobile app, more reserved to specific industries that get the most value out of this. I think you see e-commerce and retail getting a ton of value out of a mobile app. But this has its limitations where consumers require you to download a mobile app. It needs to be on your phone. It's not just an app you can go to on a website, for example. And today there's also app fatigue, right? And app saturation. And there's usually a top 5 apps that everyone uses every day. To get into that top 5 is incredibly tough. So it's also not the most scalable way, and it's also not the stickiest way where as soon as there's a new app, it kind of replaces that other app in that top 5 list. You run into similar limitations as you do on a website, somewhat limited, needs to be updated a lot. Live chat exists, but not necessarily ideal in most cases. And you also need to collect opt-ins for things like email, although you do have channels like push messaging, for example, to kind of get more engagement from your customers. But you're competing with every other push notification on the phone. And typically, if consumers are more like me, I turn a lot of those off. So it's not actually very easy to engage people over push, again, depending on how committed your customers are. Now, this all kind of comes down to the fact that the current way of advertising is just not meeting the expectations for consumers, but it's also ultimately just yielding fewer results. So what I want to talk about a bit more, and have a bit more of an optimistic take at this, I want to talk a bit more about conversational commerce and how we believe that adds significantly to your overall lead gen motion and gets you into customers, that gets you higher engagement from customers generally, and gets them into a different journey that it ultimately leads to way more engagement between the business and the consumer as well. Now, just to make sure we're again all on the same page, what is conversational commerce? Conversational commerce is the ability or the concept of using messaging apps like WhatsApp, like Instagram, like Messenger, like several others to really offer complete end-to-end journeys for not just discovery, so being able to understand what you're buying and why you maybe want to buy it, also consideration to make sure you get the answers to your questions, but ultimately also purchase, and also be able to just generally offer an end-to-end journey to be able to purchase any product or service from one experience that, again, you don't actually have to download. It already lives on your app, on your phone if you're already a WhatsApp user. And that's exactly what this adds to the diagram that I mentioned before as well, where there's a 4th entry point now being added to the initial diagram, where messaging becomes another way that you can actually funnel these customers from that first touch point to your business to get them to engage, ultimately driving them to conversion. Now, what does this journey actually look like if you compare it to the current ways that you see ads typically being used? Mainly, what you're seeing is generally a version of this, but then a CTA is something like go to the website or go to a landing page, and it usually directs you to either the website directly, although a few of them also directly add you to the app or the Play Store and offer you to download the app instead. What we're advertising here is that we actually encourage customers to consider, or business to consider, actually funneling these customers to WhatsApp or to another business messaging channel instead, and really opening up that dialogue right from the beginning. And this has several benefits, where ultimately not only are you starting an actual conversation with the customer directly, it opens up a lot of doors for the customer to get exactly their hands on what they need to make the decision whether or not to purchase or to move on. And they're not dependent on static information that you would find typically on a website, for example, or in a physical store, or in an app. They actually have the ability to ask questions on demand and be able to get the answer that they're looking for. So the information is on demand. It's also way easier to actually personalize this, because another big benefit that we're seeing from these messaging channels is that it comes with an ID. Take WhatsApp, for example. Once you use business messaging on WhatsApp, you know that the inbound message coming in is actually tied to a person's phone number. That phone number is on record, and you have that saved. Of course, granted, you have the proper opt-in, and you're compliant and everything. You know who this customer is. You can tie that to their name. You can tie it to previous purchases, and it actually adds significant value to the customer that you're talking to, because one of the pet peeves that I have. So whenever I use a channel like this and talk to businesses, they should already know who I am. I shouldn't have to reiterate basic information I know that they have on file just because they don't have those two things coupled. But it does allow you to offer very personalized experiences that aren't easily available or easily built on the other entry points, like a website, for example. The other one that I mentioned is the end-to-end journey concept. Like the moment you click on that ad and you go onto one of these channels, you can really have an entire conversation that leads exactly to the moment of conversion. Even the moment of conversion, the actual payment step is facilitated in that conversation directly. Like WhatsApp and many others, Instagram or Messenger as well, have steps to facilitate payments where you can just perform the actual payment in the conversation, essentially completing the entire loop, not having you leave the entire experience just to be able to complete it, which again is usually not the same for something like on app or on the mobile website where you're still jumping through multiple steps and it feels a lot more tedious to go through in a seamless conversation that you would find yourself in. I mentioned it a bit earlier as well, but another big perk on this is re-engagement, where you're already in a dialogue with the customers, like having been, in front of them and knowing who they are and having that open line of communication already. There is no need to be able to actually get their information ultimately and be able to circle back with things that are relevant to them. If it's relevant information, and I'll touch on some of the things that are important to use when exploring this. If it's relevant information, then they're going to get the value out of this as well. And it's easier to open up those lines again to make sure they re-engage them if they drop out of the process, for example, or if there's something relevant that you want to put in front of them based on their previous history and these types of things. And it's ultimately going to be a lot more beneficial to the customer to do this over these channels and over channels that are highly saturated, like, for example, email or even push to some extent. And that gets me to the following one, where it's also usually their channel of preference depending on how you orchestrate this. Where, in Europe, WhatsApp is very prominent. In the States, text messaging is very big. Australia, Facebook Messenger. So you're going to have markets where one of these channels is very dominant, and most people prefer to use not just to talk to their customers, not to talk to their friends and family, but also to businesses. And businesses should prefer to use when talking to their customers as well. And using your channel of preference as a consumer allows you to ultimately build better relationships with these businesses and thus be able to have actual better conversations that lead to better results for both the consumer as well as the business. Imagine the opposite of this, where today businesses are usually the ones dictating which channels they decide to use for consumers, and consumers kind of have to deal with it. Imagine if you turn that narrative around and what kind of impact that would have on the relationships that you're building with your customers. And last but not least, maybe a personal favorite of mine, these channels are also asynchronous. It's not a phone call. It's not a real life conversation. It's not a live chat conversation on a website, which maybe seems asynchronous, but it's not, because you need to stay on the website for it to be valuable, or else there's lots of hoops to jump through. These channels, you can send a message and 4 hours later get back to continue the conversation, and it feels equally seamless. So you can do things at your own pace. You can explore things on your own at your own convenience, and ultimately not be dictated by the company as to how to engage with them. Again, offering the consumer so much more convenience, which leads to better results altogether. And we're seeing this back from a lot of the research that we're doing as well. We work with several companies to service some of this stuff. And there's a couple of highlights that I want to point out and share with these as well. I've kind of hinted at them just now already. The first one is on convenience, where businesses or consumers typically prefer using business messaging over emailing or picking up the phone, where it's so much more convenient to take an app that you're using on a daily basis with the majority of people you're talking to also mess the business and having to go through the same setup and actually calling a company, which is usually a pretty foreign thing depending on the country that you're in, or even the generation that you're really targeting, where typically people don't really pick up the phone anymore to call a business because it just takes up too much time and there's really no bandwidth for it. The second one is on really building up the same expectations that you would have when it comes to communication between friends and family as with a business. Those two things shouldn't heavily differ. They shouldn't be two completely different things. And consumers typically agree with this as well. They want that same convenience that they have when messaging friends and family as they would with a business. And last but not least, probably the most compelling one, where 85% of the ones interviewed for this or surveyed for this build stronger relationships with business as well, because they get to use the channels that they prefer. Like, they're the ones that have that sense of control now, where they're the ones ultimately deciding which channel to be using when talking to businesses and not the other way around. And again, that level of convenience, but also that level of choice and preference makes them build strong relationships with the brands they actually want to engage with. And they're happy to be re-engaged by these brands. And again, it helps foster strong relationships that last really long. And there's a couple of things that we also just generally learned about when talking to businesses about this, to customers about this, and what we kind of experiment with ourselves when really positioning a lot of solutions. And there's a couple of things that we discovered that really enable you to win at conversational commerce. And there are more concepts, and it's going to be, depending on your own business and industry that you're in, but these are just typical rule of thumbs that we think really help you win, again, at conversational commerce. On the convenience side, again, I've mentioned a few of these things before, but it's really about providing these end-to-end journeys for discovery, consideration, and purchase, where people shouldn't have to jump through channels or different experiences just to be able to make the decision to buy something. They should be able to choose a channel themselves and be able to stick to that channel from start to finish, being able to leverage all different functionality that these channels offer to really complete the overall journey as well. The second one is on personalization, where you should talk to your customers like you already know them, because you usually do, and then reach out to them on channels that matter, again, with content that also matters. Where if I'm using WhatsApp or, again, other channels that are linked to me, we've probably already engaged before. And if we haven't, it's time to build that rapport up so that next time we speak, it becomes a bit more personal. And you know what I'm looking for. You know what I've looked for in the past. And again, it adds to you knowing me as a customer and giving me an overall better experience, which again fosters stronger relationships. So I engage with your business a whole lot more, again, driving ROI. And last but not least, it's on the engagement piece, and it's been sprinkled across the different slides all before this. It's about providing quick and automated resolutions to common issues, but also just being human, escalating to you when you need it. I am all for automated solutions and having very simple solutions to common questions and common issues to help a customer or a consumer relieve an issue very, very quickly. Often enough, though, that doesn't cover the full basis of it. You need to be able to escalate to a human sometimes, and it should still feel human, even though it's automated. I don't think it matters as much that people think or know it's automated in the end, as long as it still feels like you're talking to an actual company that's thought about this and doesn't feel super robotic. And this type of content generally has a lot more engagement with customers, and people prefer using these as opposed to a more static way of designing these experiences. So what have we learned? Consumers want to reach out to a business on a channel of their preference, which builds strong relationships and are easier to re-engage and ultimately lead higher ROI. And that's why I believe in conversational commerce as much as we do. Now, considering I am clearly so passionate about this topic, and I can go on about this for hours, but I've blocked it to a few slides. I do want to touch on how we at MessageBird actually help businesses win in this category and the different things that we've built over the years to leverage the most out of this. Now, to start off, I want to just remind everyone of our vision. We believe in the world where communicating with a business is as natural as communicating with a friend. And this touches on everything I've talked about before, right? It should be about convenience, personalization, about high levels of engagement, and that same ease of use that you have when texting your best friend or your mom, you should also have when talking to a business, and it shouldn't be that difficult. Now, we've built up an entire platform over the years to really enable businesses to do exactly this and to help achieve this vision. It's, of course, a never-ending project. We're constantly tweaking and adding new things. I want to quickly skim over this just to give everyone a bit of a refresher as to what our offering looks like. The very bottom, we have our super network layer. This is really where our connectivity stack lives on the telco side. We're a registered carrier in several countries over the world, offering SMS and voice and numbering solutions. And on top of that, we have what we call the OTT channels layer. These are all the channels that I've been talking about so far. Right? These are the channels that you're used to using with friends and family most often. And here you'll find your usual suspects like Instagram, like Messenger, like WeChat, and so on. On top of that, we have a variety of different categories that allow you to really get the most value out of these channels. Think of the orchestration piece where we have Flow Builder. Mihai in a bit will talk a little bit more about that one. It's a drag and drop tool that allows you to build and orchestrate communication workflows on top of these channels, allowing you to build the very journeys that I've been talking about just now. And then we have solutions where you have things like Inbox and the Omnichannel widget, which are really turnkey applications that allow you to provide entry points for both your agents as well as your customers to get the most out of these channels, also on your website or also within your support team. And ultimately, it offers a complete package to really enable conversational commerce as well, but also explore other use cases. And last but not least, what I want to touch on is the integration and consulting piece, where, of course, we understand that we're likely not the first company in a business stack, or maybe number 2 or number 3. You're likely already using a CRM, something like Salesforce or HubSpot. Maybe you're built on top of Shopify. We play very nicely with these tools. Our functionality fits right in, and we happily work with them to extend the functionality to make sure that you can leverage our platform while continuing to use your existing workflows as well. So what we really help customers do in the end is help them engage on their preferred channels. We have a pretty wide variety of inventory of channels these days. It's very much the core of our platform and something we're continuing to invest into to extend as well. One thing I also want to touch on, just to make sure that everyone understands how real this also is, we work with customers directly to implement a lot of solutions. And one of the customers I want to bring up and highlight is a business called MessageBird. They're a Dutch company, and they're primarily active in the Netherlands. And we help them achieve 80% conversion rates on WhatsApp Business by rolling out Flow Builder and WhatsApp and a few other of our solutions as well. Like ultimately, they had issues really engaging with their customers altogether. They were only available over phone and over email, and they just weren't seeing the engagement levels and the conversion levels that they were hoping for with these channels. So we'll be rolling out the solutions that we had yielded very great results for them. And it's companies like these that we enjoy working with very much and working with closely also to discover how we can get a lot of the different value out the door. Mihai, I'm going to give it over to you now to talk a little bit about Flow Builder and show what we can do.
Thanks, Joey. That was very insightful, looking great. Hi, everyone. I'm Mihai. I'm a solutions engineer at MessageBird, and I'm here today to answer the question in everybody's minds. How would this actually work, right? How does shopping in Instagram and WhatsApp look like? Because probably we haven't seen it before. Or if we did, it's not in the form that we're going to show you today, which is in a conversational way. Joey already explained that conversational commerce means shopping online, which we're used to, but in a conversational manner, which means exchanging messages with your favorite businesses, same way you do with your friends in the apps that you use mostly, like WhatsApp or Instagram, right? But in a conversational way, exchanging messages. That's very important. Now, let's look at how this would look like. And I'm gonna start with Instagram. Now we need the customers first to interact with our business, to send out a message, and then we pick up the conversation in an automatic way and guide them through the shopping journey. So for this, we need several customer entry points. Like you can either have a button in an ad, something like start a conversation in WhatsApp or shop in WhatsApp. The ad, you can put it in your favorite social media platforms, the one that give you the best conversion. Or you can have some Instagram stories, let's say, where you ask the users to engage with a message. We're gonna look at that in a bit. You can have QR codes. You can even place them physically in stores. Again, with an invitation, scan this QR code to keep communication with our business via WhatsApp. You can even shop on WhatsApp. How this works, it's basically with a deep link that opens the conversation with a pre-filled message. So what I'm gonna do next, I'm gonna share the screen of my phone. And let's look at a conversation that I had with a business that's, of course, a demo business that we've set up that's selling coffee beans. I'm gonna do this right now. Okay. Let's see, I hope everyone's seeing this. So this is my actual phone. And what you guys are seeing is a conversation with this business, Mihai.MessageBird, which is a demo Instagram page that's apparently selling coffee beans. And what I did, I reacted to their story. It's exactly what you want. You want a customer to send out a message, to initiate the conversation. And then you have an automatic flow saying, welcome to the Coffee Beans Insta Shop. Get your fresh Ethiopian roast now. And then you present some products that you have. In Instagram, it works with what we call carousel message type, which looks like this, where you can scroll and see different products. You see information on the products, price, weight, and then you can choose one of them like I did. You also have buttons that help you tell the business what you want to do instead of typing. So clicking on buy light roast, exactly, or dark roast in my case here, I clicked on this button and it sent this message to the business. And then I get another message asking how many bags you wanna buy, and then I say 3 bags, and then you get options, and those are all buttons that you click. So I'm not just typing those in; those are buttons that I pressed, and I selected store pickup because let's say it's on my way to work, and then you get a confirmation message where you can see your selection. So I asked for 3 bags of Ethiopian dark roast, which means a total of 51 euros. And then I selected store pickup, and I also get an address. Of course, you can customize this the best way that fits your business. Again, you present the user with buttons. That's something that all businesses should do in conversational commerce and other conversational use cases that you implement. WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, other channels as well. So that it's easy to get interaction from the user. Don't expect them to type too much. That's a rule. Yeah, I clicked on confirm. It's saying your order is confirmed. Next, we'll follow up with a payment link. Now, I get this message with a payment link. We're using Adyen for this demo as our payment service provider. You can, of course, use whatever payment provider you're currently using, as long as they offer this thing called payment links. And so this is just an API way of obtaining this payment link, then putting it in a message, formatted in a nice way so that it looks like this. And then they would click this link and get to your maybe your usual payment checkout page that you use on your online store as well. As soon as they make the payment, we're gonna keep checking if the payment went through, if it was successful. Then we follow up with a message saying that the payment was successful. Thank you for your purchase. And maybe you want to do cross-channel communication where you invite them to receive order updates via WhatsApp. So I'm saying yes here, and then it's asking me for my WhatsApp phone number. I'm sending the phone number, and then it's saying that we'll keep you updated, which means that basically I'll get order updates on WhatsApp, which is super nice if I'm using that daily with my friends, right? So this is where it ends, right? It's an end-to-end shopping experience, only that instead of doing it online in a web shop where it's just you and the web shop, here you can guide the user through the purchasing journey, similar as you would do, let's say, in a physical shop with a shop attendant, right? In a conversational way. People like conversations, right? So this is how it looks like in Instagram, and I want to show you how it looks in. It's a similar journey, but only that WhatsApp has invested more in this conversational commerce space. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's move over to WhatsApp. We're in WhatsApp right now, and we have this special type of message, which is called let's say a multi-product message or a product catalog. Instead of showing pictures and information on the products and then selecting one of the products, this is more advanced, and they're investing a lot in this space. So you get this type of message with a button here saying view items, that when you click would actually open something similar to a web store with categories and products. Let's click one of the products here. Get the product page. It looks nicer, I think. You can see that it's on discount. You have information. You can go to the website if they want to see more information on that product. You can add a link here. You have a button, message business, which basically sends out a reply on this product, where you can actually ask the business questions related to this specific product, similar to when you reply to a message in WhatsApp, so that they know what exactly you're referring to. Then you have this button add to cart, which I just clicked, and I added a product to the cart. Let's add another one. And have like in the upper right corner, you can see this shopping cart right here. So if I click on it, it opens my shopping cart with my selections, and I can increase the quantities, or maybe change my mind. I don't want this anymore. I can remove it. And then you see a subtotal with the money that you also save by buying this product, which is on discount. So now you just send this message over, and it's telling the business what you're trying to buy. And then you follow up, of course, with information. Where do you want to get it delivered, with a payment link, of course, similar to what you've seen in Instagram. But yeah, that's the main difference here. The main difference is that you have this nice way of browsing the catalog, putting products into your cart, and they're investing a lot here, adding more functionalities, like being able to search for products, sort them, filter products, in case you have a longer list than 3 in this demo. So yeah, another big advantage of doing this whole shopping experience in WhatsApp or Instagram is the fact that you have the conversations in your phone, similar to the ones that you have with your friends. So anytime I want to buy coffee again, I can just pull up WhatsApp and send out a message that would initiate the shopping experience. So I think it's very, very comfortable, right, for me as a buyer. So this is something that we wanted to show you guys exactly how it looks, and we believe this is the future. Okay, and let me think. I wanted to mention something else at the end. The fact that everything that you've just seen was built in Flow Builder, which is our low-code automation platform, which is basically, think of it as a drag and drop solution where you design these communication flows, sending and receiving messages, automating a chatbot experience. So whatever it is about automating conversations is done in Flow Builder. We're very proud of this tool. I think that was it for me. We're really looking forward for questions. I'll be here to answer mostly the technical ones if you have any. So thanks.
Thank you, Mihai. Thank you, Joey. Joey, through your presentation, we've learned a lot about how the space of advertising has changed and how conversational commerce is helping brands convert better. Thanks for sharing that. And Mihai, thanks for showing how Instagram and WhatsApp are changing the game when it comes to shopping online for consumers and for brands to improve their conversion. We've had quite a bit of engagement in this, and there are a lot of questions we need to go through. So I'm just going to get started with those questions. All right, this is a question for Mihai. If the customers react to an Instagram story, are we able to get the image for which the customer has reacted? Are we able to continue that conversation for that image?
Yeah, so you want to have the context, right? In case you have multiple images in a story. You can have that if you wish as well. It's something that you can pick up in Flow Builder and decide on different journeys.
Thanks, Mihai. Joey, a question for you. Does Flow Builder, does our platform enable appointment scheduling?
So I guess there's a couple of different answers to this. There are no native message types in these channels yet that really facilitate this. In the ideal world, I think you'd have a message type where you can, kind of do this natively in the channel itself, something we're actively advocating for among many other use cases. What we do though, and I think that's part of our added value in the market here as well, is that we've actually built templates on top of a lot of these different channels to direct specifically towards use cases like this. So we have templates in Flow Builder that allows you to roll out an appointment scheduling use case, which essentially does the same thing, but then morphed into what it would look like on a conversational basis, right? So you would be able to, for example, send a message to a WhatsApp account, like, hey, I want to schedule an appointment. Based on what we know, we give you options. You copy paste the option in the conversation itself, or you use a button, for example, to choose one of those things. So we kind of use the features that we have available in order to mimic what the most native version of appointment scheduling would look like. So that's the longer answer is yes, and that also applies for a variety of other use cases. But of course, we'd love to have more of a native support feature there, and as soon as that's available, we'll be first in line to integrate that as well.
Thanks, Joey. Mihai, the next question is for you. Can we link MessageBird to Google Spreadsheets?
Yes, it's a native integration. It's a step in Flow Builder, drag and drop, and that's it. No coding, no any of the heavily technical stuff involved.
Yeah. Oh, if I can also just add on to that a little bit, I think we have a little bit of time. We see a lot of customers using Sheets as a database as well, right? So Flow Builder is essentially great for two things. It's great for very quickly prototyping and getting a basic solution out of the door. Again, it's a drag and drop tool. You can click these things together, hook it up to existing tooling, use a spreadsheet as a database to kind of run that proof of concept, which we see a lot of people that we work with get a lot of traction with internally as well. Because within a matter of days, often even sooner if they kind of cancel some other things, they have a working version of the idea that they can pitch to other internal stakeholders. The second thing is, it's production ready. You can deploy this to production right away, and there is very little steps that need to be done to get something from the prototype version onto a production ready solution. And Sheets actually fits in quite well on both sides. I wouldn't advocate using Sheets, by the way, at huge scales. If you're doing millions of interactions, probably there's the better solution. But short answer, yes, Sheets is definitely available.
Thanks, Joey. There's one question that I'll take, which is about showing a live example now on Flow Builder, managing a conversation on WhatsApp with a shopping cart. Happy to do that, but given we only have a few minutes left for the webinar, would love if you reach out to us directly by visiting MessageBird.com, and someone from our sales team would love to show this around. Move on to the next question. This is, just give me a moment. Quite a few questions here. All right, this one's for Mihai. Does Instagram shopping carousel work only if you have a shop set up?
Good question. Actually, I want to say that those type of messages that you've just seen, the carousel one and the product catalog one, those are only available through the business APIs of those channels. So it's not related to the fact that you have a shop set up or not. It's not linked to that. That's not a requirement. To answer your question, no, you can use the carousel messages even if you don't have the shop set up. In my example, there was no shop set up, but you can still have them through the business API of Instagram. So yeah, they're mostly directed to businesses, not to consumers.
Maybe more of a blanket answer for these. Like, we support as many of these message types as possible. It's something that we're, of course, prioritizing heavily as well. I see a question coming in: if we support these on Flow Builder already? Yes and no. So our APIs have full coverage and parity with the other APIs in the back, essentially, for these respective channels. Flow Builder is always a little bit of a step behind in those cases, but we're catching up as fast as we can. So carousels will be available in Flow Builder very shortly. In the meantime, there are workarounds for this by using the API through Flow Builder anyway, and still getting access to this type of functionality to build these types of experiences. So it's not necessarily a blocker, more of a slight inconvenience, if you will. And the other part is also, in some cases, and I need to brush up a little bit on this as well, there are some prerequisites and requirements to be able to get access to the full extent of these features, usually meaning that you have to be retro stop and these types of things. But the ones mentioned, like a carousel, like buttons, and the basic functionality you would need to create very rich experiences, don't have those requirements, right? And we support for any business account, essentially, which is the only requirement that we have.
I just want to add one thing. Both of those type of messages are currently in beta in Flow Builder, so it's good.
Oh, good. We're already there.
Yes.
Brilliant. Joey, a question for you. Imagine a customer is going through one of the WhatsApp or Instagram flows, and Flow Builder has interacted with that customer automatically. Is there a way for someone to find out that a customer has gone through a flow?
If a specific customer has gone through a flow.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. It's not something that we natively support, as in we don't have an overview of like, hey, these are people that have gone through your flow, but it's just something that you can very easily build. We've done this on purpose to not be too opinionated, but offer a more generic solution to achieve it, depending on how the customer wants to actually be able to do this. I don't want to bring up sheets too often. Again, personal passion of mine, but a sheet would be a very lightweight, hacky way to get this done, to log anyone that has actually used the flow in a sheet like that. But the same can be done for a database. The same can be done for a CRM. And that's the latter is what we see the most often, right? Like on incoming message, even before we sent out the auto response or the reply or kick off a chatbot experience, we said, like, hey, this person has contacted us on this channel at this time. Right, but even the body of the message in there, and push that through a third-party resource. And in that way, people have control over not just the overview, but have it in their existing workflows in their current tooling already. So yeah, that would be the advocated way to go about this.
Yeah, and to add to that, you can even take it like a step further and have it have Flowbuilder integrated with your order management system or your CRM. So when the customer reaches out, you know the number, if it's WhatsApp, for example, and then you can query your CRM system, find that customer, find the latest order that they sent, or their latest address that they used. And instead of demanding from them to send you that information again, you can just ask them, should we use this data that we already have? So you simplify the conversation and provide a better user experience.
Thanks, Mihai. Great question coming in from Victoria. Do we have functionality to send promotional messages from these channels? If not, would someone look at using two platforms, example, Klaviyo and Flowbuilder, to communicate with the customer over WhatsApp?
I can take that one. Short answer is yes. I mean, we offer the ability to do both. I think there's a couple of different ways to answer this question, though. Like, we work with a lot of companies that prefer an API integration. They build our APIs into the existing stack. And kind of like I mentioned before, we offer parity to the underlying APIs there, which includes access to promotional messages. I must say, of course, there are requirements when it comes to being able to send these, and there's some things to check off on that list to make sure you're compliant to each channel's respective regulation. Other than that, the short answer there is yes. What we are also working on is more of an out-of-the-box campaign tool that allows you to actually leverage these promotional messages in bulk and sending out campaigns using an UI instead. So we already have a tool called Campaign Builder that does exactly this. It's for today very much focused on SMS, like Klaviyo actually, with very limited email support as well. We're looking into extending this with a lot more functionality, a lot more channel access as well. So that's maybe something to look forward to.
On the topic of regulation, there's another question for you, Joey. Are you obliged to sharing a way of opting in for WhatsApp?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think this applies for all channels, right? I think generally what you want to do is two things. One of them is the more obvious one on the overall compliance. I mean, GDPR in Europe and similar bodies of compliance in other regions are pretty clear as to what needs to be done. You need to have a record that shows that you are allowed to talk to these customers on these channels. Opt-ins can be gathered in a variety of different ways, and we have some examples on our website for those as well. I think last but not least, or the second thing rather, and this is the main thing, don't abuse these channels. At the end of the day, these are the channels that we use on a daily basis as well. We're all consumers of other companies. We don't want to be spammed with different things either, because it's just not effective. It just doesn't work to send a lot of these different spammy messages, because you're just not going to get the engagement for one. You're going to be flagged, and your business account will be revoked. And we're pretty strict on these things as well, because we stand on both sides in this case, adding consumer value, but also business value. So I think that's more of a litmus test that we use to make sure that we're rolling out the right solutions to customers.
There's another great question coming in from Stephen. Can WhatsApp, Instagram automation, conversational commerce could be used for multiple markets and different languages? What if you have different phone numbers? Would there be a way for us to translate content?
Yeah, many different ways, actually. We see maybe mainly two things. And Mihai, correct me if I'm wrong here. We have larger customers rolling out an account per region, right? It kind of depends on how they're organized, where a lot of the bigger companies out there have departments organized by country. They will have an Italy team, for example, or a Spain team, or a Dutch team, and that has their own marketing team, respectively, that manages these channels. So that's kind of how we see some of those companies organized. They have their own WhatsApp account, their own Instagram account, and they kind of manage it not independently per se, because they're using the same tooling under the hood, but that instance is managed by them, and they roll out their own features and their own functionality on those respective channels. The other way to go about this, if you don't want to do this, we actually offer a bunch of functionality in Flowwheel that allows you to detect the language, to route based on the language coming in, to auto-translate using AI, and lots of different functionality that actually allow you to bridge that gap between your customers and the language they're speaking, or where they're even texting you from, and where your team is located, or how you want to organize and route there, or even how to translate those languages. So there's lots of features that we use on that side to help business out as well.
Yeah, or you can even organize it in a way where you have like a big account and then sub accounts for your independent countries. So this way you have more control over, I don't know, usage, billing in a centralized way. That's another option that we offer.
Thanks, Mihai. And Joey, there's one question from David. Can you share a link regarding using WhatsApp, Carousel, and Flow Builder? David, please get in touch with us on MessageBird.com, and one of our sales team members would love to do a demo for you. The next question is from Sharoz. Can MessageBird communicate the customer's post-sale journey, for example, shipping or delivery updates?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any real restrictions as to when in the customer journey you message. Look, I think the main thing that I think is so valuable about not just conversational commerce, but just generally messaging channels as a bridge between the business and the consumer, it's a open dialogue, essentially, right? It doesn't necessarily have to close once you kind of have that agreement with the consumer, where if that initial contact is asking for more information on the product, and then ultimately they buy something and you give them updates on shipping, it's this full service, full customer journey channel that you can use to keep them in the loop and engage with your business. It includes pre-sales, the actual sale, moment of sale, as well as post-sales in general. And again, make sure that they opt in for this initially, but once that opt-in is there and you have on record that you're allowed to do this and it's added value to a customer that you have, yeah, absolutely, keep them in the loop with relevant things. And that's maybe the other thing is, if it's relevant for the customer, definitely let them know. Like, if I order something and you let me know on WhatsApp it's going to be in front of my door in 2 hours, I would love to know that more often. So I think those things are super added value and definitely should be more available.
Thanks, Joey. The next question is from Vishnu Teja. Can we integrate MessageBird in-app as a plugin?
In-app, is this? I can't ask for clarification first. I'm assuming this is like in the application itself. If so, then sort of like we have REST APIs, right? So you can build on top of REST APIs and bake that into your application. I don't necessarily see the value there, because WhatsApp is already an app on the phone. So I think that would just kind of dilute the experience for the end customer in this case. So again, I don't know much about the use case, but you can definitely work with our APIs to help achieve that. I just don't know what the value would be.
Thanks, Joey. Another question from Steven. The messaging feature on websites is hosted on the website itself. Would this have an effect on the website speed as opposed to standard chatbots?
Now, if you're talking about our omnichannel widget, like these are all loaded asynchronously, right? So that means essentially that they're not in the way of the resources loaded when loading your website. So your website effectively loads first to make sure that it's not blocked. And then you can kind of queue the loading of the widget itself. So it loads when everything else that needs to be rendered first is rendered first, and then it's available. And it's also, we only just load the button in the beginning, right? So only after actually clicking on the button do we load all the rest. So again, it reduces it to milliseconds. So it's not something you'll notice.
Thanks, Joey. We are 8 minutes over time. So thanks everyone for staying longer for this conversation. And thanks a lot for your time and attention today. We've really enjoyed chatting with you and hope you found some value in here as well. please do get in touch with us on MessageBird.com, and our teams would be happy to chat with you directly.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.